13th hearing of the Westborough Conservation Commission is now in order. Read the general notice here. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Westborough Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at town.westborough.ma.us/site/westborough.ma/files/uploads COVID-19_meeting_info_1.pdf. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting at www.town.westborough.ma.us/conservation-commission/news/conservation-commission-remote-meeting-information. The first item on the agenda this evening is the continued meeting for request for determination of applicability, Keolis Commuter Services Railway right-of-way. Is the project proponent here?
Yes, good evening. For the record, this is Clary Kutu. I'm Director of Environmental Compliance for the commuter rail, Keolis. I'm here today before you to discuss the request for determination of applicability submitted to you in July. And this RDA is to actually review the wetland boundaries within your jurisdiction. Following past years, we issued this RDA at the beginning of the process for the 5-year VMP, Vegetation Management Plan permit, that's currently going to be renewed for years 2021 and 2025 through 2025. The railroad has approximately 8 miles that run through your jurisdiction. Out of those 8 miles, we have less than 2 miles that are spray zone, 1 mile, approximately 1 mile of no spray zones, and approximately 5 miles of limited spray zone. Matt Donovan is here with us from FDCE. He will go over the maps with you. Just to be frank, in 2016 and 2015, when we submitted the RDA for this vegetation management plan that's currently approved for the 2015-2020 VMP, your commission issued a -5 determination stating determination allows Keolis to conduct vegetation management activities in accordance with CMR 11, Massachusetts DAR approved VMP. And that being said, I'll just ask Matt to do the brief introduction of the maps, and then we can move forward with a discussion, and I'll be available for questions.
Hello, everyone. This is Matt Donovan from FTC Engineers. I'm going to start just by sharing my screen, and I can pull up our vegetation management website that we included in the submission for this RDA. So this is our website. It's a good tool for anyone who wants to stay updated on the vegetation management activities for Keolis. As you can see here, all the towns are listed for the maps that we provide you with. And also included in this website is the 5-year vegetation management plan and all of the yearly operational plans that we will continue to send to your commission, but it's easier for some people to keep updated this way. So this is the map that we did change it to a higher resolution map for you after your request during the last meeting. None of the zones changed in these areas, but we just changed the background and layers. So just to get into the process of the work a little bit, these maps were mainly made for the chemical portion of the plan. However, in the vegetation management plan, there's an integrated vegetation management program that combines chemical and physical methods to combat the vegetation. Best management practices are used throughout the plan in an effort to limit the chemical application, which has been a main objective for Keolis. So these maps, like I said, they're mainly made for the chemical portion of the plan. Basically, Jordan and I went out into the field and I showed him how these maps are depicted in the field. The railroad tracks themselves have markings that coincide with this color-coded system. So there's an applicator in a spray truck who goes along with an environmental monitor who's a direct employee of Keolis' environmental team. They will always have these maps in hand when they perform this work. Most importantly, in the in the yellow zones, those zones will never receive any form of herbicide outside of the track structure itself, which is federally mandated to keep completely free of vegetation. In the blue zones, they're treated pretty similar to the yellow zones where just the track structure is sprayed in those zones. And outside of the track structure itself, they can be sprayed in 1 year intervals or 2 years intervals, depending on if it's a light or dark blue zone. In these areas, they're really only sprayed on an as needed basis and when the conditions allow for it. So in these areas, more of an effort is taken into mechanical and physical methods to control the vegetation. So to go over what determines these zones, I pulled up part of our vegetation management plan, and this is just the appendix that has CMR 11 for the rights of way management program. Mainly, typically your restricted zones and your no spray zones are because of proximity to wetlands and water supply areas. So your light blue zones are going to be within 100 foot of any wetland or water supply areas. And yellow zones, which is a no spray zone, is typically the most common type of yellow zone is because you're within 10 feet of a wetland or water within a wetland. So that's what you see in these areas. Jordan and I went out to some of these. I think we had five spots of interest that I think him and Sherry decided they wanted to look closer into. And we confirmed that these areas were depicted correctly in the plans on how the regulations allow us to go about this vegetation management activities. So I think that's a good description. I can show you the areas that we did go over. One of the areas is in this zone here. I think this is the MBTA station right here for Westborough. Just past that, we looked at this whole area for this dark blue zone to this yellow zone. Another area we looked at was here in between 95. I think this is 95 and 495.
90 and 495.
90 and 495. Yeah. So we looked at this whole area. There's an area of concern because of this little stream that the mass GIS shows, but it's not really in the field. The field conditions don't really show what you see here, and the road bed is so wide anyway that it wouldn't require it to be a yellow zone. So we cleared that up. And there are a couple other spots, but we cleared all those up, and I can open the floor up to any of you if you guys have any questions about the maps or regarding the process of this work.
Anybody from the board have
A
questions?
couple of questions.
Go ahead.
So the first question is, you said that in the light blue, and I assume the dark blue zones, you may spray outside the track periodically, but you didn't say how far outside the track. And the second question would be, I'd like a little bit closer examination of the area between the two highways, because I do know that that area is actually a sensitive area with some plants that grow in the wetlands there that are atypical for our area.
Matt, I'll take this one. Can you highlight the area that the second question is for?
Is this area, which is already a limited spray zone. It's just
Right. So two things I want to explain. The process we follow is simply to ensure that we maintain the property lines vary within the entire jurisdiction of Westborough. But one of the key things that our environmental monitor does is identify with the INR crews or track crews ahead of time what areas are more critical for chemical application versus mechanical. And in specific, your town, your jurisdiction has a lot of resource areas. So what we want to do is limit the spray specifically to the roadbed. And in the fall, when we need to do brush, we anticipate what areas are critical for doing brush control with chemicals versus mechanical. The reason being is because it's better suited over time to manage the vegetation in a cyclical and methodical way, so it becomes sustainable. So many of the areas that you have within your jurisdiction, some of the areas are depicted with fence in areas that are easily, with physical characteristics that are easily depicted. So the spray will not go beyond the fence of a neighbor. The spray will not go above, a certain height, because all trees and branches that overhang the right-of-way need to be trimmed back via mechanical means. It's not effective for us to spray over a certain height. So there are significant controls in terms of how we spray and when we spray. What is really important for you and the commissioners to understand is that the spray pattern the spray will always happen along the roadbed. And Matt, if you can pull up the cross section in the VMP, that might be able to address some of the concerns that the commissioners might have. Okay, so this is a typical kind of cross-section of the right-of-way, right? Some of the areas along the right-of-way within your town has maybe 2 tracks or 1 track. What is really critical and important is that chemical will always be applied to the roadbed, because there's no mechanical means that can be deployed to ensure that the ballast, which is crushed stone, probably an inch in size, we cannot do any mechanical or physical means. So the railroad is exempt specifically because those areas need to be completely and fully vegetation management free. So the areas that you see where the ditches start and into the roadbed, those areas need to be vegetation free. The areas adjacent to that, and I'm sorry, I live right behind the tracks. That's timely. The areas adjacent, what we call the shoulders, will be maintained with with as minimal chemical as we can apply to ensure that that vegetation doesn't grow into and encroach upon the right-of-way. So each area within the right-of-way may receive different types of either chemical or mechanical, depending on the physical characteristics of that area. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
How wide are those shoulders?
That's just it. It's not like highway. Highway and the utilities have a specific easement, whereas it goes 50 feet or 40 feet from. Ideally, we would have 40 feet from the main center line. However, because the easements of right-of-way for the MBTA are different between each town, because some areas have 2 tracks, some areas have 1 track, it's really not specific. So we can't really say, I'm going to go 20 feet from center line of track outwards and spray. We have to maintain, and that's what the environmental monitor does with the INR crews. We have to maintain what that right-of-way property boundary line is of MBTA and make, the determination of what areas can be sprayed and cannot be sprayed. So there's a lot that goes into the planning of this BMP. The objective is, of course, to reduce as much as possible the application of chemicals within the areas that are sensitive.
I have a question. You said that the environmental monitor uses the maps that you showed us. That's what he has when they're out on the rail line spraying?
2 reasons for that. The
No,
maps.
not the question I'm asking. You said those are the maps that you give the environmental monitor at that scale?
They have that map, and we also have geo-reference coding, which is used on an app that they follow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's twofold. The reason why it's really effective to use those maps is because it depicts the milepost and also the double track and the intersection lines and culvert lines. So they use both.
Okay, because I'm looking at that map and I can't see at that scale how you could possibly figure out what's what and where exactly you are at that scale.
Right, but the mileposts are very specific in our track charts. So aside from that map that is mostly provided to you for the delineation of boundaries, our guys use track charts and use the georeference coding app. So they have all three resources for them.
Okay.
Also, the chemical applicator, the licensed chemical applicator that we've been using has been doing this for more than 20 years. And the INR crews and our environmental monitor are very knowledgeable with the track structure. So we work in consonance with them in determining ahead of time what areas would be most suited for chemical versus what areas would be more suited for mechanical.
And one last thing is the tracks themselves are marked with this color-coded system as well. So the maps are really just allowing the environmental monitor to kind of give them a warning that one of these restricted zones is coming up.
Okay.
And it's not an exact science, whereas they come precisely to that marker and stop the booms for a chemical application. When they come before that site, if there is any indication of wet areas, they will always shut down the booms. So that's why it's critical for the environmental monitor to be in directing the applicator, because it might be that 30, 40, 50 feet before that yellow marker is, he's going to determine, nope, we're going to shut down the booms now because it's wet. So it's really a method-driven approach and very, very well executed, if I may.
Okay. Anything else from the board?
I have a question. I don't know if you guys can see me. Can you see me? I'm on a phone.
You can see you.
Okay. The
You.
areas between the two highways, I know it was kind of downgraded a little bit.
Can you
I-
go back to that, Matt, please?
I
To the map.
entirely, where is it? I think it was the last one. Was it section 29 or something? There was a number on it. But I completely trust Jordan and his ideas of the site. But where we're in such a strong drought right now, does that affect the delineation of what appears to be a stream but currently is not a stream?
No, I think it's really important. That's a really good question. So two things that I want to leave you with. The chemical applications are divided into two. The pre-emergent happens in the spring. As soon as there's no more snow and the conditions are appropriate, it usually happens between the first, second, or third week, starting the third week of May. The pre-emergent is mostly driven by the application that has to go directly onto the roadbed to ensure that we have no species growing on that roadbed over time. So that roadbed will be treated with pre-emergent. And areas adjacent, wherever it is dry, it will be treated. However, in areas that are marked no spray, those areas adjacent to the roadbed will never be sprayed. In limited spray zone, we have a 2-year interval. And the area that you were actually discussing, and I feel like probably the screen is frozen for Matt, you have a combination of blue and yellow, dark blue.
Okay.
What that means is that every 2 years we can spray on these areas. And no sooner than that. So the methods that we are managing is we're going to mechanically manage those areas. And if we can avoid at all extent the chemical application in those areas, that is the priority. So only under certain circumstances will we specifically spray those areas in the fall so that the brush will not encroach upon the right of way. But my method in managing the chemical application is to ensure that we preferably apply the mechanical in those dark blue areas and in those yellow areas. Does that answer your question?
It does. I believe it does. So we're not losing the yellow denotation of or denotation of it where it's
Correct.
so the yellow staying there. Okay, I understood that wrong. I thought we went through the field and we said, oh, it's not as sensitive as you thought it was. Okay,
No.
It's still yellow. I'm good.
It's still yellow, and it might be that when we go out there in the light blues, it's wet, and it's not yellow, but it's wet, and our booms will not go out.
Okay.
So there are specific parameters that we manage. So any areas that are wet, any areas that reflect surface water, for whatever reason, it might have been a very rainy season in the early spring and we still have a lot of wet areas, those areas will be protected. There's no spraying in areas that are wet.
I guess a final procedural question. I'm not aware that we were offered the BMP prior to the original request. In the future, will the BMP be attached to future requests?
So the RDA actually included, that's a good question. The RDA actually included the link so that you can access the BMP. I also worked out with Mac, with Dot directly, so she can email you, all of the commissioners, the link to the environmental monitor and also the link to the VMP. I'm wondering, did you receive from Dot an email on that?
No, we did not. And in the future, we want the document attached to the application We don't want the link. We want the document attached to the application. It's an electronic filing. I don't think it's a heavy lift to provide that information to us directly in the future.
I think that's a good idea, and I apologize for that not being
Because we didn't
specifically
see the
identified.
link. We didn't see the link. It's not obvious in the text when you're reading through it. Okay, I saw references to it. I did not notice the link. It wasn't obvious. And
The RDA actually has the link for you to access the VMP,
I
but
understand that. I
apologize.
understand it's in the letter. It's not obvious. And in the future, that's what we want to see.
Okay, and that's fair. That's a fair request. Also, for your information, every year, and this is something that other commissioners have mentioned in the past, every year at the beginning of the year, you will receive via certified mail the yearly operating plan. So every year, aside from this process for the VMP and the 45-day comment period, you also have an opportunity to come back to us and ask us about what we're doing every year. So that's something that has kind of been, for many commissioners, a process that they really didn't understand in the past. So one of the things that I did work out with MAC and MSCMP, with Michelle Grisenda and also Dot, is that every year when we issue the yearly operating plan via certified mail, you will also receive an email with the link so that you can access and know that you can come back to us with any additional requests for information on the yearly operating plan for your town. There's a 45-day comment period every year.
Okay, anything else from the board on this? Right. Jordan, you want to go through the issues with the kinds of positive, we have a couple of different ways to approach this from here. We can issue a positive determination, which will recognize the confirmation of the resource areas and will give the MBTA the ability to do herbicide management. My understanding is that the vegetation management plan that was submitted to us by the MBTA asked for some very, very broad interpretations of the exemptions under the Wetlands Protection Act, which actually are not, don't apply here. What we can only legally do is say that the only thing we can really do under the regulations is give them a positive determination so that they can do the herbicide management. If you look at I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at the guidance to Massachusetts Conservation Commission's wetlands protection regulations and vegetation management in railroad rights of way, but they recommend not providing a blanket -2 and -5 determinations, which would allow application of the entire vegetation management plan, because the exemption they're asking for actually does not apply under the Wetlands Protection Act exemption for railroads. So Jordan and I went over those this morning. If Jordan, you want to explain it a little bit better, did anybody on the commission not see that memorandum?
Andy, you summed it up fairly well. To Clary's credit, she is correct. I think many communities that received these requests for determination are issuing negative determinations, allowing the MBTA and Keolis to, to do their yearly operating plan and all of its components. So, strictly speaking, the request that was issued to you is only asking whether the boundaries of resource areas depicted on plans and or map referenced below are accurately delineated, in which case you're correct, Andy, you would be issuing a positive 2A. What Clary is requesting is that you consider issuing a negative determination, and we can kind of figure out which negative determination would fit the best, that would allow them to do all of the activities in their vegetation management plan. And you are correct, Andy, the exemptions that exist within the Wetlands Protection Act really apply only to herbicide use. And there's one exception to that. There is an exemption in the riverfront area regulations that allows for what they call maintenance, so repairs, resurfacing, repaving, clearing, landscaping, essentially the activities that are within this vegetation management plan of work within riverfront area, provided that this work is not within other resource areas. So basically what that's saying is that in these specific riverfront areas, by the regulation, all of the work in the vegetation management plan could be exempt, provided that you confirm the resource area boundaries. But in all the other resource areas and in the buffer zone, this is not true. So I'm just giving you the information, and you guys can decide what you're most comfortable with. I think most communities, again, many communities issue negative determinations and then expect that the MBTA and Keolis communicate very closely with the agent in the office on what they're doing. But by the regulations, at least my interpretation, and Clary, you may have a different take, not all the work is exempt.
Right. So it's really important that the commissioners understand that when the RDA goes out to 100+ communities, it's kind of like a blanket RDA. Each community has different jurisdictional areas. So, for example, some communities will do a -4 because they have no wetlands in their areas, but we still have to go to them, or -6. And some communities will do 10.03, 6B, 6A. Some communities have riverfront areas, and the exemption is 10.58, 6A. All of them will apply 10.05, 3A2, because the request for determination as warranted by 333 CMR 11 requires that the RDA lasts for 5 years. It doesn't last for 3, it's a 5-year process, with the option that on a yearly operating plan basis, you can always come back to us and say, hey, we have questions about this. What can you do? Or if there's any change, for example, a new private well was installed, or NHESP, by the way, reviews these maps every year at the beginning of the year to ensure that there are no changes in endangered species and priority habitats. So that's really important for you to know. It's part of the process. But you have a right to come back to us and tell us every year within that 45-day comment period, Clary, we have questions about this. How are you going to deal with this? Or we have something new happening in this area. So each community, each town has a specific way of addressing the exemptions applicable to their jurisdiction. And in the past, you've given us a -5 with the exception that we will follow the VMP as approved by DAR. The VMP is a statewide program. So it's, at the higher level is a statewide program. So their review process is very, very strenuous. It's very specific to the requirements both at each level. Right now, the advisory panel is a review of cross-department agencies and NGOs that will meet and we'll discuss whether our VMP requires any changes, and that will happen in the next few weeks. There was a 45-day comment period that ended on October 9th, It was a 45-day comment period. So I think one of the misinterpretations of this application was that we did give you a little bit more information this year than previous years. And the reason for that is because a lot of the communities that I've dealt with in the last 4 years really were confused. They're like, well, what's a vegetation management plan? So if we don't spray, we have to cut because we can't do anything other than. And it's better for us to use mechanical means because it's less chemicals applied. So there was a misunderstanding by the entire community. And the guidance came out. We offered our opinion. It basically is your commission determining within your jurisdiction and your areas, what are the specific exemptions to recommend. I recommend, based on your maps, that 10.036B be one of the exemptions, that 10.586A be one of those exemptions, and 10.05382 be one of those exemptions. And of course, I don't think, and I don't believe that anyone in this commission would argue that the commuter rail is a lawfully located structure in the service of the public. So it's up to you how you want to address those exemptions and how you want to align them. You can either go with a -2 or a -3 and or a -5. You can do all of those three. But what's really important for you to understand, if you just issue a positive, I will appeal because I will not issue an NOI because there are no other alternatives for us to do the vegetation management plan for you and 100 more communities. It has to be, consistent, and we have to follow the same processes across boundaries and across, town boundaries. So that being said, I'll leave it up to the commission on how you wish to address it and how you wish to apply the exemptions.
I also don't like being threatened.
I'm not threatening you, never.
That's what it sounded like.
No, I hope it didn't. I'm not threatening you. I'm just saying that the positive determination requires us to issue an appeal because we cannot do the work if you have a positive determination. Mr. Chairman, I would never, ever cross a boundary like that. I'm very respectful. I'm just giving you the information.
I understand, but the regulations do not cover railroads for,
And that's fine.
they don't include railroads.
And that's fine. Then you issue the motion as best as you deem and estimate that is, practicable for your commission.
Andy, may I ask a clarifying question?
Yep.
Of Clary. Clary, if they issue a positive 2A and they confirm the resource area boundaries, and then you have a vegetation management plan approved Perth, 333 CMR 11.0. My understanding is that then you are entitled to the exemptions that you just listed, with the exception of the things that those exemptions don't cover. Those exemptions are specific to herbicide use. So there's some amount of work that you would be able to do without appealing or by fact that they issue a positive 2A. Am I incorrect?
Yes.
Is that a wrong understanding? Can you explain?
Yes. So in any positive determination, and this is for any project that comes before you, and I've been doing projects for quite a bit of time. If you issue a positive determination, you're forcing the hand of the applicant to issue an NOI for the work that's going to be done within that specific site. So a positive 2A just tells us yes. However, if you don't issue a negative determination, what that tells us is yes, the property boundaries or the wetland determinations are accurate. However, Keolis, you have to come back to us with an NOI for any work that you're going to do beyond that. And that's kind of the crux of the problem, if you will.
Right. Yeah, Jordan, this is Holly Palmgren from the T. How are you? And I think Clary is right that, any positive determination assumes that I have to come back with a NOI, and that's not something that, we can do under the VMP. And Mr. Chairman, I also wanted to address, that MACC guidance is not the regulations. Their interpretation of that is that the railroad doesn't get afforded those exemptions. However, we have used and done those exemptions for, my 20-year career at the T, and commissions have issued under those exemptions. So I just want to say that, that's an opinion piece by MACC to commissions that we respectfully disagree with that evaluation of the regulations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have a couple of choices under a -2 determination. Jordan, we went over those this morning. Can you list those again so the board can understand what they are?
I actually cannot right now. I lost my remote connection to my work desktop. Sherry, are you able to just bring up a blank RDA or determination form and read those off for us?
Yes, I can pull it.
Thank you. I had it ready, and then I lost my connection.
I would like to ask something. This vegetative management plan, is this something that's been in the process of being developed over the past few years for a statewide application through the towns?
So the VMP is it's a 5-year permit issued by the Department of Agricultural Resources. So currently we have an approved vegetation management plan that actually expires December 31st. So what we're doing, and in hindsight, in the past, when we came to you in 2015, we did not really specifically address how comprehensive a vegetation management plan. So there's a lot of misconception, mostly geared from the fact that when we came before you in the past, we never explained it. But the VMP is a 5-year permit by the state. And what we're doing now is making sure that your commission understands what activities under the VMP, under the future permitted VMP, are going to happen within your jurisdiction.
And at the end of the year, do you give us some kind of a follow-up summary of what was actually done?
I wish I could do that for 100+ communities. Everybody has asked me for that. It's really difficult, and I'll be very honest, it's really difficult to do that. However, each community has the capability of requesting via FOIA any kind of documentation that you wish. And that's number one. Number two, every year, at the beginning of the year, you will receive a specific yearly operating plan for the entire commuter rail. And you can always come back to us and specifically address your questions as to your community and how that's going to be handled. And I think that has been a missed opportunity for many of the commissions.
Well, I think that it seems like you're going to have to be keeping records of what you're doing along the way as you go along the commuter rail.
We do.
So there is going to be some documentation of this, and I would think at some point in time is going to be put into some kind of a plan that can be accessed by the public or the commissioners and all of that.
You can access that right now through a FOIA.
Okay, so
Yeah,
what that's
if you wanted to request via FOIA, all of that documentation is readily available to you. But it's so much effort that it has to come through a proper process. And the process that we would recommend is to go through a FOIA.
Because I think that because this is kind of new and changing, and we're just kind of hearing about what exactly the details are of what you're doing, that that might be a good idea for all of us in a year to go back and visit what exactly it is that you did for mechanical removal or herbicide treatment, so that we can make adjustments to what you're doing then. That
Well,
to me,
you know what? That gives me an idea, and I will propose this to MAC. Maybe what I can do is prepare a presentation for the MAC for next year so that we can tally up the last 5 years of the VMP and be very specific. I think that would be a good presentation either in the March or in the fall workshops that we do for MAC.
it
I
seems
think
like
that would be a good way of doing it. It's just really addressing the reporting requirements for, like, for example, you're asking me to do one thing, but 3 towns over, they're asking me to do 3 different things. And it's really difficult to do it that way. That's why I recommend that if you really have specific questions in reference to what chemicals, what timing, everything, the communities have an opportunity to come through a FOIA and we can do that for them. But actually, that gives me an idea to present to DOT. Maybe in March we can do something, or in the fall for the MAC conference in the fall of 2021. That would be kind of a good workshop to do.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lack of knowledge going on here within the communities, and I think
the application has a list of abutters on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely a lack of understanding, if you will.
Yeah, and this is Holly Pongren from the T2. You know, we're obviously presenting a lot more information now than we have in the past, but this is not a new process, right? The VMP goes through this cycle every 5 years and has been going through this cycle for 5 years. And so the work, I don't think, is necessarily different than what we've been doing. I just think we're doing a better job at explaining it to each of the communities.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's just our ignorance of what you're doing. You know, we just, and if there was a way that you could incorporate with the MAC or some sort of a schedule, so we're aware of when you're coming through our town. So if say we wanted to go out and take a site visit and just see what you're doing, that might help as well.
As long as you don't cross the tracks without some RWP people.
Of course not. No, of course not. No, that would actually have to be, you know, a very, you know, site specific and documented site visit.
Yeah.
Looking at the negative determination that is in here, does the board think it's reasonable to issue a negative determination 2, which is the work described in the request is within an area subject to the protection under the Act, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. Therefore, said work does not require filing of a notice of intent. And we can condition that to ask for notification prior to the beginning of any mechanical work. So that
I think it sounds reasonable. You know, this is a utility company that, you know, we have to give them a little bit of leeway here because they're involving 100 towns or so that they're going through. I think that's very reasonable.
Okay, would 1 week notice be sufficient, Jordan? So that we would be able to potentially go out and see what they're doing or see what was done?
Yes. Also, Andy, for what it's worth, if you look at the next option, negative determination 3, it's very similar to 2, but allows you to attach conditions.
Okay.
Now, one thing that I want to be very clear, Mr. Chairman, is that I would love to be able to plan and have my plan executed specifically to what my requests are, but we have over 5,000 acres to maintain. So this is what happens in my world, which drives me crazy, and you might not understand it, but I may have a plan to go out to your community next week. And that will change, and I will not go to your community next week because some outage somewhere else diverted all my personnel to one specific project, and all of a sudden I need to shift and change. So it's really complicated to be able to manage vegetation activities, specifically when it comes to mechanical. The chemical applications go through an iteration process of the schedule that's so time consuming that if I were to be able to do the chemical application and the mechanical application with all the time that my team spends in planning, will be gold. So one of the key things that I want you to understand is I may come to you and say, you know, at the beginning of May, I can say, okay, these areas might be due for mechanical control, and all of a sudden it changes, and we will not be able to do mechanical control for that year. And it will shift completely for the following year. And it's crazy, but that's what happens. So you can be notified, but it doesn't mean that it's going to happen specifically in the time frame that we say. And that's one of the...
So, ma'am, what do you want us to do? We are appointed by the town to administer the Wetlands Protection Act to protect the wetlands. And we are trying to work with you saying, give us some notification that you're going to be out here. Our town, the railroads go through lots of wetlands, unlike many other towns.
Mhm.
So we have a regulatory obligation to protect the wetlands. We have a regulatory ability to monitor people when they're doing the work. So what you're saying is that unless we give you carte blanche,
No,
whatever you
I did
want.
not say that, Mr. Chairman.
Well, that's what you make. If we're asking for 1 week's notice and then you're telling me, oh, we can't do that.
I didn't say we can't do that.
That's just about what you said.
No, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I think, Chairman, what she means is she may give you a week's notice and say she's coming out next week, but understand that that could change. And so I think she wants you to be prepared that I may tell Jordan that we're coming out next week and then we have to reschedule it. So that I think she's trying to just give you the heads up that, you know, we'll give you that notice a week ahead of time, but things could change. And I don't want you guys to get, you know, upset that we have to reschedule.
Well, that's not what she said, Holly. So, you know,
that is what I said.
Excuse me, let me finish. That's not what you said. You said, oh, we'll tell you coming out next week. It'll turn out we're not coming out till next year. I understand plans change. And if you give us the notice and then the schedule changes, fine, let us know. But we still have the authority under the town to make sure that the work is going right, have the opportunity to look at it. So if we give you a -3 and we state that we'd like a week's notice before you're going to go out there, certainly if the schedule changes, that's fine. But I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for 1 week's notice.
I don't think it's unreasonable either, and I didn't mention that, Ms.
Perhaps with this evolving situation we have going on here, they're going to have to hire somebody that's like a town liaison that can be there at a specific time that doesn't have other responsibilities, so that when they do give us a notice that they're going to be out there in a week, they'll have a specific person that's assigned to do that. That to me sounds like it would be something that they could consider for the future, so that, you know, because this is going to be an ongoing every year thing. And towns are going to want to monitor what's going on.
Right, and I think we can do something of the sort where we identify specific communities within a line that we will be doing mechanical application. The yearly operating plan goes out to you every year. And as much as it is my responsibility to be able to communicate to you, it is also a responsibility for the commission to review that yearly operating plan and come back to me with questions.
When do we get that?
You will get that between second and third week of every year, January.
Okay, because you just mentioned that the 45-day comment period ended October 9th. So I thought
that's for the VMP. That's
okay.
every 5 years.
Okay,
But
so
the yearly operating plan, you have every year an opportunity to come back to us with questions.
okay.
And
All
that
right.
has its own separate comment period, the yearly
It has
operating
its own
plan.
separate 45-day comment period, correct?
Okay.
I just want to write up this motion before I read it to the board.
Andy, before you complete writing that up, what document is it that we're going to receive ahead of the chemical spraying that tells us what chemicals will be used in our town?
Yes. The yearly operating plan will have a specific listing for that year's chemicals to be applied. And every other year we'll change those chemicals to ensure that there's no resistance over time to the chemicals. So we alternate the chemicals within the sensitive areas list approved by the state.
And do you have a schedule for when it is that's applied so that we would know ahead of time when it's
Correct.
applied?
Yes, and I think it would be easier moving forward now that we're more online these days, because during COVID-19, we've created more of an online community. So you will be getting an email with the link to the yearly operating plan, as well as via certified mail notification.
All of that information will be in the yearly operating plan sometime in January.
Sometime in January, hopefully by no later than the third week of January. It takes about 90 days to go through the entire process for DAR to approve the yearly operating plan.
So if we had a condition that said that we were to receive that yearly operating plan no later than January 31st, that would be acceptable to you?
That's a really stringent condition because, again, things can happen where the yearly operating will, ideally, I want it to go out by the third week of April. But you can put it as a condition. I'm fine with that. The plan is that you would get the notification once the yearly operating plan is submitted to DAR. So DAR will receive it. And let's say they receive it the second, third week. Then they will issue the EMN. And before the EMN is issued, the commissions throughout the entire state need to receive it, as the Board of Health and as the Board of Selectmen. So all those people for each town need to receive the yearly operating plan via certified mail. So it's really not a good condition to establish that way, but you can mention, you know, something along the lines that the railroad would ensure that the yearly operating plan is communicated timely with the commission. And that would give us some wiggle room because it depends on how DAR manages the EMN. And with the EMN, I mean the environmental monitoring notification. So it has to be timed so that DAR receives it, they issue the EMN, and before then, we issue the communication and the certified packages to each town. So if you put a specific date, that would be a little bit complicated for us to manage in that way because we're dependent on DAR. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. The problem is if we just say in a timely manner, that means you can deliver it anytime you want. There's no.
Well, the thing is, for our advantage, if we want to spray and we want to do our vegetation management plan starting May 1st, we need to go 90 days before that, and it has to be all done before that 90-day period, including the 45-day comment period thereafter.
So in a timely fashion in Q1 of the calendar year would.
To ensure that you are communicated before
Right. the
the
work
yearly
happens.
operating plan is executed.
Right. So, yeah, because there's, the DAR process is very specific and has certain timeframes, but I don't control that timing. But it also, that process does require that you get it before, to have that 45-day comment period before it's finalized. So you receiving it is a requirement of the DAR regulations.
And so if we wrote a condition that was consistent with that,
Yes.
in a timely fashion, so that we receive the plan a minimum of 45 days prior to any work that's to be done.
Sure.
Writing this down, Gary.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to recommend, with all respect, in the past, you have issued a -5. If you don't feel comfortable issuing a -5, that's fine. But if you do issue a -5, you can issue it under the exemptions of 10.03, 10.58, and 10.05. That's one of the options that I recommend, specific with your jurisdictional wetland areas. If you wish to present a motion different from that, that's fine, but that's what I recommend.
Okay. I'd like the board to consider the following motion. I need a motion to issue a -3 determination for vegetation management work done in accordance with the approved vegetation management plan along the MBTA right-of-way, subject to the following conditions. 1, provided that they give the commission a 1-week notice prior to starting mechanical vegetation management so that the conservation department can have the opportunity to observe the work. 2, the railroad will ensure that the yearly operating plan is provided to the commission in a timely manner, a minimum of 45 days before the operating plan is executed. Does that meet what you wanted to see, Gary? As far as say again?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any discussion on the proposed motion? Okay, hearing nothing, I need a motion to issue the -3 determination as just stated.
So moved.
I have a second. Kelly? Okay, roll call vote. Andrew Kenningsburg, yes. Tim Buckaloo?
Tim, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. Question to the chair. I was not present for the first opportunity for when the RDA was first discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And, can I vote on this having seen today's presentation?
I don't see why not. We went over it in exhaustive detail.
Thank you. Then I vote yes.
Okay. Stephanie Kelly?
Yes.
Justin Lundberg?
Yes.
Okay. Gary Kessler?
Yes.
Jerry is absent. Kelly Marston?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I'll see you in a bit for the enforcement order.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the project change request 332-895 I-90 I-495 interchange improvements, geotechnical investigations, Mass DOT, and Tetra Tech. Apologies for the delay from everybody who was following, but this was a difficult subject to go through. So the people from the 495 project, you may come forward.
Yes, Mark Forbert and Tetra Tech. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
And I'll, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen. The software is different, so it's a different. There we go. Okay, I'm here to request an amendment to the order conditions that we received That was for exploratory borings as part of the I-495, I-90 project. Because MassDOT is dredging more than 100 cubic yards of material within land underwater, we need to file a water quality certification with DEP. Part of that certification requires us to, the application itself requires an analysis of the chemical composition of the dredge materials. And so therefore, we're requesting to do some more testing to add it on to the previously issued order. We're proposing to do borings in 5 locations. In Westborough, we have a couple in Hopkinton down here. We'll just concentrate on Westborough. We have the Sudbury River Tributary 13. You have Cumberland Farms in this location. And on either side of the of I-90, we also have stream crossing 26 in this location, again, between Transflow and the Cumberland Farms property. There's crossing 32 on Flanders Road, and stream crossing 34, the final dredge area. So this is the one that's on the south side of I-90. Cumberland Farms would be over here. We're proposing 2 borings in that location. The next one is the other side, and here's the, you can, I actually added some photos here so you can see what the area would look like. Borings in the stream bed itself. The next one is on the other side, Cumberland Farms property over here. Again, 2 borings in this location. We're doing 2 borings in these locations because they're bigger than, bigger areas, more dredge than some of the smaller locations, which I'm about to show you. Okay, and then this is crossing number 26. Again, Cumberland Farms being over here. This is going on to 495. Again, this is in this area. There's 5 cubic yards of dredge proposed in this location. So we have to test the sediment there, but we only need 1 boring in that case because it's such a small area of dredge. This one, 4 cubic yards of dredge. This is in the median, Flanders Road being in between the 2. Crossing 32. You can see it here. It's one of the smaller streams that we have to deal with. And finally, we have, crossing number 34. This is again a small stream, which we're doing 9 cubic yards of dredge. Because these borings are for dredge, for the water quality cert, they only have to be as deep as the bottom of our dredge where we're putting in our scar protection, which is 4 or 5 feet. So they'll be done by hand. So no equipment driving through the wetlands, unlike the previous one where we did have to get some equipment and access. And this one's someone out there with some waders, and they just do it. They do their auger and they composite the sample and bring it back and then test it. And so I'm respectfully requesting that per order, condition number 14 of the order that that you find the change is not significant. I'll take questions now.
Questions from the board? Just one point of clarification. So I remember from the very lengthy presentation, you're going to be doing in the stream bed, you're going to be doing some kind of restoration work or improvement of those outfalls?
Yes, we're actually, the dredge itself is countersunk down, and we put riprap, and then we plant the riprap. DEP came up with a specification based on other variances to give it a more natural stream bed as opposed to just putting the riprap there. So it's actually a vegetated apron is what we're calling it.
Okay. All right. Anything else from the board? Hearing nothing, I need a motion to approve the proposed changes to permit 332-895 as insignificant, limited to the collection of sediment samples from tributary 13 of the Sudbury River as described in the project change request submitted by Tetra Check on 9/15/20.
So moved.
I have a second. Somebody unmute their mic or wave.
Second.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Roll call vote. Andrew Kenningsberg, yes. Tim Buckaloo.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'll put you down as 2 yeses. Stephanie Kelly,
Yes.
Justin Lundberg,
Yes.
Gary Kessler.
So,
Gary?
I'm not sure.
Okay, Gary, did you say yes?
I did, yes.
Okay. Gary is absent. And Kelly?
That's weird.
Kelly, can you wave or jump up and down?
She stepped away, I believe.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll put her as not there. Anyway, motion passes by majority. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Now I just figure out how to stop sharing this. This happened to me last time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the enforcement order for 85 East Main Street, DEP file number 332884. Who is representing the proponent?
Lou Amarati from Gilmore Building Company, and Eric Gilmore is on the call as well.
Okay. All right. So, Jordan, do you want to? I know we did the site visit. So,
Yeah, I drew up 2 motions for you, Andy. I issued the enforcement order on October 1st, but the commission should ratify that. So you do that by motion. And then the proponent is going to walk you through a restoration plan that they developed based on comments from the commissioners present at a site visit on September 28th. And then you'll have an opportunity to either approve or discuss and, go from there based on your, feelings about their restoration plan.
okay. So the enforcement orders has already been issued. I need a motion to ratify the enforcement order issued to Robert Arceri at 85 East Main Street, permit number 332884 by Jordan McCarron on October 1st, 2020.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second. Trying to get to these unmute buttons.
Okay. Roll call vote. Andrew Kenningsberg, yes. Tim Buckaloo,
Yes.
Stephanie Kelly,
Yes.
Justin Lundberg,
Yes.
Gary Kessler.
Yes.
Gary is absent. And is Kelly Marston? Just put her as not there. Motion passes. And the next thing is discussion of the restoration plan itself. I just had a question regarding why the riprap couldn't be pulled back to the edge of the no-touch zone in all areas, rather just in the one area. I didn't quite get that. I didn't understand why it couldn't be done elsewhere. Can someone explain that to me?
It was way too steep and unstable. Those rocks were actually holding, it would have been very unstable to move those rocks from those areas.
Okay. So taking the rocks out and putting in soil and vegetation wouldn't work.
I didn't think so. I thought it was going to make it a lot more unstable.
Okay.
And anybody else?
Steep slope there, Andy.
I'm sorry?
I'm saying it really is a very steep slope there. It just doesn't seem beneficial to touch what they had done.
Okay.
And it made sense to just pull it back in areas that were flatter.
Excuse me. My office assistant.
Andy, if I could make one comment, I just want to make sure you noted on the restoration exhibit that Brian Waterman submitted, in those areas that the riprap is in the 30 no setback, and they're proposing not to remove it. We did ask that they, I guess the best word is anchor those with larger stones. So you don't get a lot of the smaller stone migrating down toward the wet over time.
Mm-hmm.
So as opposed to ripping it up completely, we're actually asking them to put more stone in, but in a more strategic way.
Okay. Okay, got it.
And we also had asked them to put in a vegetative apron around that whole area as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any other comments from the board on that? Right, hearing none, I need a motion to approve the restoration plan titled Riprap Modification Buffer Restoration Planting Exhibit submitted by WDA Design Group dated 10/5/2020 for 85 East Main Street, permit 332884.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, roll call vote. Andrew Kenigsberg, yes. Tim Buckaloo,
Yes.
Stephanie Kelly,
Yes.
Justin Lundberg,
Yes.
Gary Kessler,
Yes.
Jerry Cushing is absent, and is Kelly Marston still not there? Okay. Motion passes by majority vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is discussion of 338 Turnpike Road Land Use and Restoration Plan. So where do you want to start with that?
Andy, is anyone from that property here?
Is it Brittany?
I believe is hear from them.
I'm
Okay.
here.
All right, so I guess in the Dropbox, sorry about that. Okay, in the Dropbox was a discussion of the plan. Brittany, I take it you've had an opportunity to read through that, the recommendations?
I guess I probably missed that note. I don't know. Did it come out with the meeting agenda? I guess
Well, Jordan, what?
I don't know.
Where are we?
Hey, who's doing what around here? So I'll just give a brief timeline. Brittany had presented to you all what we'll call a landscape plan or a site plan that was based partially on the restoration plan approved in 2005 and partially on their current agricultural and horticultural activities. We conducted a site visit on or about the first week in October, and I had emailed to the commission a summary, basically trying to summarize what I heard, comment from the commission. And Andy, if you'd like, I can read those just to give you a sense because I know not everyone was there.
Well, this was what was in the 338 Turnpike Road, Westborough document that's in Dropbox. Is those the comments you want to read?
Yeah, in the Dropbox is the original restoration plan from 2005, the timeline that Sherry put together going back years and years, just demonstrating the issues with noncompliance of the wetland regulation on the site by the current owner, not specifically by Brittany and her, company. So I guess let me just read these notes that I sent you all, just for the record. In general, it appeared to me that the agricultural activities currently on site are in general acceptable. I didn't hear or sense any strong objection to what they're doing on site. Permanent wetland boundary markers should be installed. Those were initially required in the original order of conditions, which is where that 2005 restoration plan comes from. But I've looked around that site, so has Sherry, and of course we were there with a number of the commissioners, and we did not see those present. It's my opinion that those would be very helpful, some permanent demarcation of the wetland boundary, and or if the commission would prefer a no touch buffer or some other buffer to mark where you can and where you can't do activities there. I also heard expressed that there could be a greater buffer in certain areas. In other words, that it might be possible to pull some of their agricultural activities further from the wetland in certain areas. And then the real question that you've posed, Andy, and I think the commission is grappling with is what's the best permitting option moving forward? How do we capture what they're currently doing on site? How do we condition that? And I guess it would be my recommendation to the commission would be to issue a new, require a new notice of intent, and then issue a new order of conditions. And we can, when you get to that point, then we can talk about what conditions would be appropriate. But the key, I think, is, and the thing that I think the commission is most not wary of, but most concerned with is what happens if the current lessees, if the current operation ceases, or if the property changes hands, what happens at that point? And I heard some, I guess, desire to have some condition pointing to that original 2005 restoration plan, that should be the way the land is left should the current agricultural activities either cease or change. So that's pretty much it, Andy. That's kind of the summary I got from your site visit and from the discussions thus far. The certificate of compliance that you issued on that original order of conditions actually does have an ongoing condition, which points specifically to that 2005 restoration plan. So that's what should be on the landscape now, and obviously it's not. So it would be my recommendation that whatever conditions you attach to a new permit to allow their current activities, that there be something pointing to that plan as how the land should be left should the current activities cease.
Okay. So we need to ask for a new notice of intent, which will require the wetland boundaries to be marked on the site, not just flagged, but permanent monumentation. So I guess it goes back to the question of who will submit the notice of intent, because Brittany, you're leasing the land, you don't own the land. So that's the question about how to move forward with this process.
Well, I mean, we're your point of contact now. I feel like we can't really speak to anything that's happened in the past, but we're here as a point of contact. And I think us and you guys, I think it's going to be a much better relationship than anything you're going to get trying to work with the homeowner at this point. So we're trying to be accommodating and do what you guys need. But I mean, I just feel like if we step back and you try to do this with the homeowner, it's not going to go anywhere. So
I would agree with you. Yeah. So I guess the question is, can they file the notice of intent? Or does it have to be, I mean, you can have, the owner of the property has to sign the notice of intent. Am I correct?
Right. That is correct, I believe.
Okay. And you can get some assurance that he will do that if you work and prepare the plans and prepare the notice of intent. I guess you'd have to work with an engineering company.
Yeah, we've kind of already prepared the plans a little bit. And I mean, filling out the notice of intent would be something that would fall on my plate. So, I mean, I can't guarantee that he'd sign it, but I'm sure that if, I spoke with him, he would sign it. I mean, the owner of our company has a very good relationship with him on a lot of levels. So, I mean,
okay,
something that he probably would do if he wasn't, further upset by anything, I suppose.
Yeah, I understand how difficult this is, but would I be remiss, Jordan, saying that we would give Brittany assistance in getting the process going?
Sure, definitely, Andy. I mean, Brittany, you're pretty much there. I think we would probably conduct another site visit once you've officially filed. You can work with Sherry and I on the details of the notice of intent. I mean, there are specific filing requirements that our bylaw regulations require, but we can point you to those and help you work through those. So yeah, I think you're really there. And Andy, to your point, I mean, Justin probably is the best person to ask on the call right now, but representatives of homeowners file notice of intents all the time, as long as the owner's signature is there. Mm-hmm. These order of conditions are going to be, recorded and act as an environmental lien, so to speak, on the property. So I think that's where you have the teeth as the commission.
Yeah, no, I understand the issues. There's a long history here. So I think we can work with you on getting the notice of intent together and seeing the process through. So we have, like you said, the permanent lien on the property that states that this will be what happens if and when you folks ever stop your activities and leave the property. Any other comments from the board on this?
If I may,
sure.
I really applaud the proponents for coming forward and cooperating with us. But the thing that is a recurrent problem that goes along with your lease status and not being the fee owner of the property is, can we issue conditions that do what you said, Jordan, which would convert basically nullify the order of conditions that we issue now and reinstate the raw restoration plan from 2005 in the event that the lessor is no longer owner of that business on the land. I have a question. I mean, that's a legal question. I don't know the answer to it because it seems to me that you're I don't know how the regulations would cover that, I guess.
In my experience, I've seen that the the owners of the property usually have to file those things if it's going on the actual deed to the property. And then they would have to have an agreement, a private agreement between owner and lessee. That's the way I've seen it happen in DEP, but I'm not 100% if that's the law.
Well, again, I think it's a little bit different issue, Stephanie. The issue is whether you can say if the current parties who are leasing the land no longer hold that lease, that there'll be an automatic reversion to the 2005 plan, or is it different than that? Is it something like, you have to keep everything in the status quo, and if you change the status quo, then the 2005 order is invoked? I'm just trying to figure out in my own mind how that plays out.
Tim, one other question, and I've been working through this in my head, is this is obviously this will be an atypical filing, and that it's not a construction project with an end. Right. They're ongoing activities. So I think we need to write the conditions in a way that at some point they're achievable and that you can issue a certificate of compliance and erase those conditions, but carry some forward. And that we just need to figure out how those point to either if the operation changes or if the ownership changes, that there's something that requires them to come back before the commission. Maybe it doesn't necessarily revert to the 2005 plan unless you as the commission really want that, but some mechanism that requires another review of this.
Yeah. It's a new area for me thinking about it. I don't know. I don't have I don't want it to look like we're placing an easement on the property. And that's what, if you say this continues, as opposed, if you don't have a point where it ends and you can tell the Registry of Deeds that they've satisfied the conditions, then it's some other kind of creature. It's not an order of conditions. It's something else. And I'm uncomfortable with that. I just want to sort it out and have some time to think about it. Otherwise, I completely endorse the whole concept. It's the concept is it's executing it in a way that complies with the law that is troubling to me, and maybe it shouldn't be. I have to just think about it some more. And I would ask Justin or anyone else who has familiarity with this particular issue to join in.
Tim, can I ask you a question about this?
Me?
Yeah.
Sure.
So my understanding is that basically what we intend to put in place is sort of the original 2005 plan or whatever it is, but to provide essentially an agricultural exemption over a portion of the property to allow for touching of the vegetation that's growing in that zone that otherwise wouldn't be allowed to be touched. Do I have that right?
I'm trying in my own mind to reconcile that, Gary, with what the 2005 restoration plan said. And I think what you're saying is theoretically correct. I just don't, I don't know how to harmonize those things. I mean, I'm involved in agriculture myself, and so I want people to be able to maximize the agricultural use of their land consistent with the, with the jurisdictional rules. So I don't know, Gary. If you frame it that way, again, when does that agricultural exemption carry forward as long as the land is being used as in an agricultural way? If you can figure out a way to turn that into an order of conditions, then that's fine. I guess that's where my position is. Again, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I just want to do this right so that we're not bothering these people for years and that they can go about their business.
Well,
Tim, the town had.
I don't want Brittany to do a lot of work only for us to discover.
Right.
So we can't make this work.
Exactly.
If I can offer, while Sherry and I work with Brittany on the process, Tim, the town has access to let's say, sort of permitting legal advice through KP Law. So I have a contact that I can talk to specifically about this and just pose this scenario. Because I don't know if Justin's on the call and wants to give his opinion, but it's a good question. I haven't been involved with this type of permitting before.
I propose that if you need a vote of the board to do that, that we make such a vote to give you to endorse your contact with our legal counsel.
I don't know that. I mean, they're generally available to us. I don't know that you necessarily need to give me the authority to do it through vote.
It had to be done in the past under prior town government. And if you don't need to do it now, that's fantastic. But if you need a vote of confidence on it or anything, I would support it. I want you to come out at the end of this, Brittany, with a plan that you have confidence in is not going to be monkeyed with, and that you can do the kind of planning I know that farms and agricultural and nurseries have to do. You're looking at a very long window that you have to be able to plan for. I mean, it's just, it's 10 years, 15 years for some of these things. So I get that. And we want to do this right. And I would suggest that, and unless somebody else has a lot stronger feeling about it, that we do that. We go on both fronts at the same time. We proceed with the specific development of the NOI and the order of conditions, and at the same time we plug our legal counsel into that and see what their thoughts are. And I'll be quiet.
just trying to write up something. So Tim, you think that we need to take a vote of the board to allow?
No, if Jordan is right, we don't have to. Gary, Andy, you probably know in the past that was a touchy subject.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not a touchy subject with the new administration, that's fine. I don't care.
I don't know that it would hurt to do it, Tim, if that's been your experience. I've not been given that guidance by the town manager, but that doesn't mean that that's not a preferred way. So if it's no big deal, then you might as well.
Well, I would make the motion that we endorse the action of the conservation director in securing a legal opinion on the whether the proposed order of conditions is legally enforceable. I think that's the narrow way to look at the question.
Okay. Hold on a second. I just want to finish writing this down and I'll read it. Because I think I got the gist of what you said, even if it's not going to read exactly the same way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just
okay.
We're all just.
Yeah. Okay. So the way I wrote this is I need a motion to endorse the conservation director. Boy, this is rotten English.
Yeah.
I need a motion to endorse the conservation director. I'll fix the language, but right now it reads, to get legal advice from town council regarding the best way to write an order of conditions for an NOI to be submitted for 338 Turnpike Road that is legally enforceable.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be reworded, but it's to get the right gist.
I don't think I can legally rewrite it after the motion has been made. So,
the intent is the same.
It's the endorse, whether you say direct. I didn't want to say direct the conservation director to do something. So I was endorsing his proposal to do that. That's all I meant to say. I don't like motions directing our conservation director to do things.
Okay. How's this? I need a motion to endorse the conservation director's proposal to obtain legal advice from town council regarding the best way to write an order of conditions for an NOI to be submitted at 338 Turnpike Road that is legally enforceable.
So move.
That's second.
I knew I could do it. Okay. Okay, roll call vote. Andrew Kenningsburg, yes. Tim Buckaloo?
Yes.
Stephanie Kelly?
Yes.
Justin Lundberg?
Yes.
Gary Kessler?
Sure.
Jerry's absent. Kelly Marston is still not available. Okay. Thank you very much, Brittany.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.
Good night. All right. Next on the agenda, 25 Chauncey Circle, waiver from the 125-foot no disturb buffer to vernal pool for shed installation. So, Mr. Zhang?
Yes.
Floor is yours.
Hi.
So the issue here is, go ahead, sir.
I'm not sure how to do this, but can I share my screen to show you a picture of where the shed is in relation to the vernal pool?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
All right, yeah. So 25 Chauncey Circle is my property, and I would like to build a new shed on my property. The red dot you see on the screen is where the vernal pool is, and the big red circle is the 125 radius that's supposed to be the buffer for the vernal pool. And as you can see that actually the buffer zone covers almost the entirety of my property. and which made it almost impossible to position the shed outside of the buffer zone. So I'd like to respectfully request a waiver of the 125 feet buffer zone, but I will try to put the shed at a location that is far away from the vernal pool as much as possible. And as you can see from the picture, actually, I don't think the frog will actually try to cross into the area where I wanted to put the shed. Most likely, the frogs are going to go this way into the stream that is connected to the Chauncey Lake. So I hope that the commission is going to be fine with this proposal and grant me the waiver. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anything from the board on this? Tim, you got to unmute.
Hey, Andy, while Tim's figuring out the unmute
I got it.
A button there, I just want to point out that it appears to me they're going to need zoning relief. They're probably going to need a variance because they're going to be inside the setback. So I just would like the Conservation Commission to consider any language indicating that the placement of the shed as far away from the resource area as possible is beneficial. So the zoning board would have reason to be favorable upon leaving the shed closer to the road.
Okay. Do we have, okay, the shed plan. Okay, I'm looking at the shed plan, but I don't see where exactly the shed would have been put or will be put in reference.
See that green strip by the road, that green rectangle next to the road? There's a yellow square.
Okay.
Yep, right there. That's the shed. That's not 50 feet back from the road. Obviously, so they front on, well, it's kind of two streets there. And so they need to hold their frontage on both those roads. So that shed would be in the front yard setback unless Fred interprets it as side yard somehow. So they'll be coming looking for a variance. And one of the things the ZBA will look for is that they have to place it close to the road to keep it away from resource areas.
Is that white rectangular box the 25-foot zone that the shed is abutting against?
What?
Yes, so the light green, the band you see, that's 25 feet to show how, so that was like a 25 feet wide, and the orange, the yellow block is well, is where the shed is going to be.
Right. What is that white box? The big long rectangular white box that adjacent to Chauncey Street. What is that?
That is just to show you that there is going to be 25 feet from my shed to the road.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter to this commission, but it will matter to the zoning board. Yeah, yeah. And it'll need to be 50 feet. It should be 50 feet per the setback. So that's the issue he's going to run into.
Okay.
So I will be in touch with the bill, and they said that they were going to discuss between themselves on how to do that. But looks to me that I needed to first. There are a few challenges, and I'm trying to deal with it one by one.
All right. Well, I'm just concerned because if Justin's saying that right now that shed is depicted at 25 feet away from the road, and when he goes to zoning, they're going to make it 50 feet. That's pretty much going to put the shed almost in the outside edge of that vernal pool.
What I'm saying, I'll help. What I'm saying is he's going to come to the ZBA asking us to keep the shed at 25 feet. He's going to say the Conservation Commission doesn't want it right up against the vernal pool. So I'm putting it as far away as possible. So can I have a variance? And the zoning board's going to say, oh, good, the conservation wants it there, then we should probably consider this.
Oh, all right, okay. Because it looks like, I mean, the red dot is in the middle of the vernal pool, but it looks like the edge of the vernal pool goes pretty close to where that shed is going to be. If the demarcation is correct on this aerial photo, that lower southwest corner extends out towards the shed. So it's, you know, I mean, we're going by a center point on the vernal pool. So does that come into play?
Well, it's going to be at least most likely 90 feet away from the vernal pool, but at least 80 feet away from the vernal pool. And as I explained, that the shed is going to be on the lawn, and most likely the frogs, once they hatch, they are probably not going to move toward the direction of the shed. It will move more to the right side and get into the stream that flowed into connected to the Chauncey Lake.
So this area, you're not concerned about excess flooding or something during, seeing as we're getting a lot more water in the springtime, typically these years? That's not going to be an issue?
Yeah, that's probably, that's you know, that area is not covered in the flood zone. You mean the shed area, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's an area where water tends to accumulate because it's a vernal pool. Does that vernal pool get a lot larger in the springtime?
That's correct. But you know, the vernal pool is actually in the wood. It's not. It's never. The water never goes up to my lawn.
Okay. Is there a change in elevation from where the shed is down to where the vernal pool is?
I think so.
So the
shed, but it's slowly. It's kind of like a.
It does go down.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Stephanie, Stephanie, if I can, I'm not going to insert my opinion. I'll just state the facts as I saw them on the ground. I did visit Mr. Zhang's house. Yeah. And it is, you know, it's a you know, very typical suburban lawn, the area where he's looking to place the shed, well away from the wooded edge. And the other thing is, what he's proposing is a shed under 200 square feet, which would, if it weren't for this specific vernal pool habitat, our bylaw regulations would allow for this as an accessory to a residential structure without, you know, review by the commission. In other words, we could do that through an administrative approval. The reason I had him come before you is specifically because of this vernal pool habitat. And I guess I will now express my opinion. Mr. Zhang is correct. I think that the buffer, the 125-foot buffer in this particular instance would be better served not in a circle as you see it, but more in an amorphous shape that goes out into the surrounding woods and not, you know, and not covering, you know, the area where his house is and the road is and his lawn grass. So in fact, I would agree that I don't think that any vernal pool species are migrating out of the vernal pool and toward the area where he's considering for his shed.
No, just for future reference, because it is so much different when you're actually on the site and looking at it 3D instead of an aerial photograph like this, maybe taking some photos just so that we can actually see how the physical layout of the lawn compared to where, because
there are photos in the folder.
Yeah.
If you go to the shared folder, you just have to, they're in there.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't go all that way into it. All right. I'll take a look right now.
It's all there. The Justin, to get back to the wording that you were suggesting, we would issue the waiver, but you wanted to add language regarding the ZBA, and I didn't quite listen hard enough to get what kind of language you would like to insert there regarding that this would be.
Yeah, I guess, you know, there, in order to get a variance, he has to explain to the ZBA that the placement of the shed is due to the shape, soil conditions, or topography of the lot. And so I think, you know, from the Conservation Commission to say that, you know, placing the shed is unable to be placed any further from the road because of the soil conditions on the lot would be sufficient to coupled with the record of our discussion, be sufficient for the ZBA to, have a good idea of whether this is a hardship or not.
Justin, if you look at the last 3 bullets on the slide that's up on the screen, it seems to me that those 3 bullets should be conditions of what it is that we're signing off on. And wouldn't that cover your concern as well?
Yeah, it would help. The other thing is, and if the conservation commissioner said, you know what, I'd really like it to be 5 feet further away than he's proposing, there's nothing that says he has to be 25 feet off the road. The ZBA can give relief even closer to the road than 25 feet. There's the shed could also be pivoted 90 degrees, and depending on the favor of the homeowner, it could be pivoted. So I would say the ZBA has the ultimate flexibility in assisting with putting the shed where the Conservation Commission best advises it, within reason. So I would say to the commissioners and to the conservation officer that if there's a better positioning of the shed that might be closer, as long as that's explained to the ZBA, you could put something that said the shed, we want the shed 20 feet, we want it 20 feet from the road, but no further than 25 feet back from the road. So you could give a limitation, but allow the ZBA to move it closer to the road if you want.
Got it. Yep, that makes sense.
Okay, well, right now I wrote what you wanted to say, and this might not be the correct language. At the end of the motion, I added subject to obtaining a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals because the shed cannot be placed any further from the road, but I don't think that's the intent here. Do you?
Subject
not being sized greater than 200 square feet, that the shed be placed at least 90 feet away from the vernal pool, and as Justin suggests, no further than 25 feet from the road.
Yeah, that's good, Gary.
Okay, but should be no shed footprint.
Justin, while Andy is typing, I believe that the address is actually Chauncey Circle, so Chauncey Street should technically be a side street as well.
I'm not sure what you mean by the zoning regulations don't recognize. Our zoning regulations say if the 2 streets hit your property, you have to have setback equal to the front yard setback on both streets.
I got it. I thought it was just for the front street.
Yeah, they don't care how you position your house. So you get into these awkward situations where it's kind of a silly rule, but it is what it is. It's you gotta hold your front yard setback on every public way.
Okay, so Gary, you said the shed footprint be no greater than 200 square feet, that the shed be no further than 25 feet from Chauncey Street. Did that cover what you wanted to say?
And at least 90 feet away from the vernal pool. I'm sorry, at least 80. It should be at least 80 feet away from the vernal pool. I misread the book.
I mean, would the board want it closer to the road? I mean, let me ask this, would it serve any benefit to put it 5 feet closer to the road? I guess I mean, he's got a fence there. You can't even see, when you're driving along the road, you can't see what's behind the fence. And, it's a pretty spread out neighborhood. I don't think we're going to get any complaints on it. But if the board feels, and if our conservation commissioner feels it should be further away from the vernal pool, we can, the zoning board could entertain that. But if everybody's happy with where it is now, then just, we'll leave it per the plans.
I think it's fine to give the ZBA the the flexibility to move it closer to the road if they want. It probably has marginal benefit. The issue with moving it closer to the road, in my opinion, is that if the shed is taller than that section of fence, it obstructs the view of people driving at that intersection, particularly coming out from Chauncey Circle, and you don't want that. So that would be the only consideration.
Well, I think that's something that can be handled by the ZBA specifically, but if we have the footprint being no greater than 200 square feet and at least 80 feet from the edge of the vernal pool, that covers us, our concerns.
Yep.
And the ZBA can figure out the rest of it.
Yeah, but I think Justin was kind of indicating that it's our concern of it being close to the vernal pool that would give them the push to let it be closer to the street. But
yeah, but that would give, well, that's why we say at least 80 feet from the edge of the vernal pool. So if they want to move it back, they can, but I mean, the distance of the shed from the road, as long as it's sufficiently far back from the edge of the vernal pool to satisfy us,
right,
then how close it can get to the road, that's
up to them.
That's up to the ZBA. Does that make sense, Justin?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so I will read the motion and see if anybody has any comments. I need a motion to issue a waiver from the 125-foot limit of disturbance and limit of structure to a certified vernal pool per section 8.1 of the Town of Westborough Wetlands Protection Regulations, implementing Town of Westborough, Massachusetts Non-Zoning Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Article 45 of the Special Town Meeting of October 20th, 2008, amended May 2012, to Wei Zhang of 25 Chauncey Circle for the construction of a shed in accordance with the map and plan provided by Mr. Zhang entitled Shed Plan 2020-0927, that the shed footprint be no greater than 200 square feet and at least 80 feet from the edge of the vernal pool. Does that accord with our discussion? Any objections?
No.
Okay. Then I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Vote. Andrew Kenningsberg, yes. Tim Buckaloo.
Unmute.
Yes.
Stephanie Kelly.
Yes.
Justin Lundberg.
Yes.
Gary Kessler.
Yes.
Jerry Cushing, absent. Kelly Marston, absent. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the stormwater system improvements at 25 Bridal Lane.
Andy, they've asked to continue. They had some technical difficulties.
Okay, right.
Okay, thank you for clearing that screen. Thank you.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is, do we want to circle back to Keolis at this point?
I think we should.
Yes.
Okay, so the next item will be the enforcement order to Mass Bay Transportation Authority at 40 Smith Valve Parkway. So who's going to take up the gauntlet here first?
Are you asking the representative? Or yes?
Thanks, Bill. I was just gonna say, I think Bill's gonna take it. This is Holly Palmgren from the T. I'll turn it over to Bill Doyle.
Okay.
Hi, all. Bill Doyle from Doyle Engineering. I guess we're here to understand more based on the enforcement order of what you guys are looking for from us. I've read the enforcement order, the order conditions. I appreciate the enforcement order, very well detailed, really maps out the timeline of things. And as I get to the end of it and understanding kind of the last couple of bullet points on it, dare I just kind of simplify it to what I think is being looked for here. In discussions back and forth, it seems over history, the intent was to install some large boulders or bollards to prevent snow plowing at the certain back corner, to install signs in that same area to signal to the plow contractor, whoever it may be, that's a sensitive area, not to push the snow into the area, particularly beyond the area rather. And then kind of the third point, which is a little different than that physical infrastructure to be installed, is more implementation of the operation and maintenance plan, which ends up being those 5 or 6 bullet points that are that have been outlined and also sent with the enforcement order. So my understanding, it's compliance with those kind of those 3 points, 2 of them being, physically installing things, and then 1 of them being kind of just ongoing in perpetuity action. So I'd be interested to hear, what your guys' take is and what you guys are particularly looking for, and then we can work to get to the end.
Jordan, you want to start, or Sherry? Sherry's.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. That was good summary. I'm going to let Sherry do most of the talking because she compiled the timeline and has been here, since 2014, and so really knows the history. I think, Bill, to your point, I think there are specific issues, or let's say fixes, that can be done regarding snow storage. And I think Sherry's going to point to 1 or 2 actual maintenance items that were left undone. I think going back to 2018, I think in addition, I think the commission was frustrated just at the amount of back and forth and communication required to get the annual maintenance as required by the O&M. And so one of the ideas was issuing an enforcement order for the physical things that need to be fixed, but then getting you and the MBTA and Keolis, whoever is involved with the management of that site, at the same meeting, so that we can kind of reset and all understand what the obligations are and what the requirements are.
Yeah, I definitely got a sense of that. It was the boulders and the signs were kind of, let's get you to the meeting, because that's the meat that we can dig into.
Right. I mean, when you issue an enforcement order, you gotta cite a specific, so the meat was the O&M plan as referenced in the certificate of compliance for that specific order. But I think the substance is just the relationship and just how do we get back to having things done when they're expected and having the communication kind of go back to how it should be. So Sherry, do you want to just update the commission sort of on, give a brief summary of your timeline and just summarize what the main issues are?
So as you all know, when I do the stormwater inspections yearly, I go out to 40 Smith Parkway, which is the MBTA site. They have 2 detention basins. Both of them discharge into wetlands. One of them discharges and goes under the road into Hockomock Pond. The other one goes into the wetland behind the property that stays on this side of 40 Smithville. The front basin usually needs to get mowed. The inlet outlet tends to have vegetation in front of it. The outlet pipe on the other side, we had vegetation work done, and then the swale cleaned out the back. Maybe a plan would help. And then the other basin that was built with the new parking lot has sheet flow. It has no catch basins in it, so all the property sheet flows into this one riprap swale that has a perforated pipe with a solid bottom, so that the water can get the debris and the sediments pulled out of it, and then the water will go into the detention basin. That's where the snow problem is happening. The snow is being plowed on top of that, and it's causing that to not function. Let me just share my screen.
Yeah.
So the hope with this was to get everything to function again so that it worked properly. This is not the one I wanted, sorry. This one. There we go. So this first area where I'm highlighting is the detention basin that just needs to be mowed yearly. MBTA does a great job of mowing a grass strip all the way around it so you can get to it, but you can't get into the basin, you can't get to the structures. And there's a swale that goes out to the back that comes out around here, which was cleaned out 2 years ago. And then I'm not sure any maintenance has been done on it since. It probably doesn't need too much. This basin in the back over here on this side is the one that tends to have more issues. All of this parking sheet flows to this basin. There's a swale that starts here and runs along this side of the fencing. It's always covered in vegetation. It's always covered in trash. There's sand, salt, everything gets into the swale. It rarely gets maintained the way it should be maintained. In this back corner here is the riprap area where there's the perforated pipe underneath. Now, we originally thought that there was just riprap in this area. And then Derek and I had someone from the MBTA meet us out there, and we discussed, actually Claire met us out there a couple of times to discuss how to fix it because the area was so degraded. So they ripped all the vegetation and the riprap out. And I want to say this was 2017. And we found that there was a perforated pipe underneath. So now we figured out where the head wall, the outfall that went into the basin came from, because I've never seen anything like this. And there is no as-built for this, unfortunately, because these were never actually fully closed out until this year. So there's a perforated pipe underneath the riprap that collects the water, and then the water discharges into the basin, which should be clean water, but the snow keeps getting put there. So now all the sediment just sheet flows on top of the snow and then is now being pushed into the basin. I have some pictures. So the hope was to get everybody at the table, as you said, to start talking about it so that maybe we could get some of this actually cleaned up and then yearly have somebody maintain these things. So this is where that should be riprap, and there's actually a pipe under there. And the pipe, if I can get it. Oh, I didn't realize you can see everything. This is the basin in the back. There's a pipe down there, which I think I have a movie for.
Yeah, you can see it in the middle one there.
I think it's this one.
Oh.
Video.
Oh, I'm sorry, this goes fast. So this is where it all sheet flows. That was riprap at some point. There's some debris over here. There's a pipe that starts in this area in the middle. I should have went slower.
So is there some sort of maintenance plan in effect right now for this, or no?
I have an operation.
Yes. There's an operations and maintenance plan. This is Holly Parman from the T. There's an operation and maintenance plan that requires annual sweeping and annual cleaning of the structures and mowing of the basins.
Hey, Sherry, do you want to pull the operation and maintenance plan up? Because it's those 5 or 6 bullet points, and if there's something more to that, that would be helpful. But as I understand it, it's those 5 or 6, and I've got it up. I can share my screen, or it might be easier for you to do it. Yeah, so that right there. So can we zoom in?
Zoomed.
Unfolded, I got the MBTA and Keolis, they had started forwarding me a bunch of information, said, look, we're doing X, Y, and Z, and it happens kind of, you heard earlier, Clary's schedule. Sometimes it's a week away, sometimes it's a month away, sometimes it's 6 months away. But I've seen a bunch of reports that kind of show this is all occurring, just may not be at the exact times. But I also do see that there's that swale that you were just showing. If that is intended to be riprap, it's completely filled with sand, so it's not functioning as it's supposed to. Or maybe it is, it trapped all that sand. But understanding it, that needs to be cleaned out. So it's, what we have here, these 5 items: parking lot sweeping, catch basin cleaning, outlet control structure cleaning, removal of trash, organics, and snow plowing off the platforms. that stuff is all occurring. But I think what we're seeing in those pictures is something that doesn't particularly show up here in the O&M, and maybe it, you know, how does that get done? It's a different thing, or maybe that's why we're here to discuss.
I'm not sure it's getting swept.
Yeah. If the sand is getting to this point, it's probably not getting swept off the parking lot. But if we're sweeping off the parking lot once a year, we might be
missing some of it. Right.
So yeah.
Well, this thing is so jammed with sand at this point that it looks like a pretty major cleaning job that's going to need to be done. I don't know how that works with, you know, even through our own conservation commission, but it seems like that's going to have to all get ripped out of there. And you know, I don't know. I don't know how you do that, but that seems like it should have to be a plan on its own, new plan.
I think looking at that and understanding that it's supposed to be that riprap swale, looking at the pictures that Sherry's showing me, and I was out there last week, and Sherry, I apologize for missing you. We communicated, and I talked to Jordan on my ride out of there, and maybe it warrants us, you know, connecting up there again just to kind of see what it should be. But the bottom line is there is sand that is plugged up that system there, and that needs to get cleaned out. And I think we have to look and see how that needs to get cleaned out.
Well, and I would have to say if, I don't know how long of a time it's been since it's been maintained and things have been swept and all of that, but obviously the schedule needs to be more periodic than an annual cleaning if that's the accumulation that you get over the course of a year. Otherwise, you're going to be having to do this major removal and cleaning, and you know, I that's a lot of sand. You know,
what I was thinking is. And I apologize to anyone that this may offend, but what might have happened is the sand was in the parking lot. It rained and then got all pushed down into the system, and then we came by and did the sweeping. You know, after. Yeah. So maybe it's not more sweeping, but just in a more logical time.
Right, better timed.
Yeah, better time, and I think we can get to that.
Yeah, if you look at the correspondence history. This has been years of non-compliance, years of non-responsiveness, years of ignoring us. That's literally what this has been. Telling you for half a decade what's going on here.
I mean, there has been some O&M activities done. I agree that sand accumulation is, you know, is excessive and needs to be cleaned out. But you know, we have done the O&M on an annual basis. I'm not sure if all the documents have been shared, and I know there has been a lot of back and forth, but it has been done. We do have the records to show that it's been done on an annual basis, and that the catch basins have been cleaned out, the parking lot has been swept, that there's been mowing. Clearly that swale has not been cleaned, but a lot of those other things have been done. So to imply that we're not doing the O&M out there is not entirely accurate, or that we're ignoring the concerns.
Holly, you're responsible for keeping your stormwater system maintained.
Yeah, so it needs to be more than annual.
You've let your stormwater system, which, you know, is on the plans. You know what the plans are. You know what it looks like. You've let it to degrade to the point of non-functionality.
If nothing else, they're not cleaning that basin when they say they are. We should be able to go out to that basin in the summer or fall and see that it's clean if they're doing what they're supposed to. And we clearly are not able to do it. They can sweep the parking lot, they can do all the mowing, they're not cleaning the basin. And that's part of the management plan. So I have a hard time sitting here and listening to you guys say, we have all the documentation, this is all being done. We have proof on the ground that it's not being done.
So what you
guys need to do is do what the plan says.
I think the plan needs to be more specific about a time frame and frequency and time frame. I'm not convinced that once a year is adequate for addressing the volume of sand that apparently is going into this basin. So
I'm saying I don't think they're doing it once a year.
Yeah, and it's clear from the correspondence and the back and forth and the non-responsiveness that you don't know where your storm drainage system is and you don't know how to maintain it, or you don't care to maintain it.
Well, I will just say none of that correspondence has come through me. The enforcement order was the first time that I was notified by personally. I know you've talked with other people at Keolis and other personnel, but nothing has been sent through the MBTA environmental office for this until we got that enforcement action.
Well,
because I've been there for 20 years. I was there when the station was built, and none of these issues were raised to my attention. So, you know, the first time that I heard that this was a major concern was when the enforcement order was issued.
Well, then you need to communicate better with Keolis or vice versa, because our contact has always been Keolis. It's always, and the fact that they are non-responsive and they don't tell you what's going on is an issue. Okay, that's not on us. We don't care. All we care is that the stormwater system gets maintained and the stormwater management system is maintained so it functions. That's all we care about, Holly. I don't care if we contact someone in Keolis or we contact you, we expect it to get done. We do over 200 stormwater systems that get inspected per year in Westborough. And this is one of the few that doesn't, where compliance never happens.
Can I just, I mean, I looked through the timeline and I agree, there's definitely was a lot of, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? And so I see that time. I don't think anyone's, you know, specifically arguing that, you know, that wants to argue all those points. But I think what we see out there, and I think Sherry, are you the one that has done the site visits out there? So you're reporting this, and you see some things that just aren't functioning as they're supposed to.
Well, the bummer, Bill, is like Keolis will fix something, and then 2 years will go by and they won't maintain it, and now it's gone to hell. And that's the bummer with this. So this wasn't being maintained, and we kept asking for it. And finally, Keolis brought people out and contractors, and it got fixed, and it looked great, and it functioned. And now 2 years have gone by and it looks worse than before when we fixed it. And it's not my money, but I hate to see you guys keep spending money.
Go ahead.
I would like to make a suggestion because like when I send out notices of responsibility or things like that through DEP, I don't just send it to the contact person that I've been told is, you know, the consultant, this is the contact person. I look up the actual deed information or the corporate structure information, and I make sure that I send it to the CEOs or the managers or whoever. They get a copy of anything that I send out so that I'm not relying on this chain of communication going from a consultant to the really responsible party. And it kind of sounds like there's a breakdown of communication going on here maybe through Keolis. I don't know. I'm not really that informed of this whole situation, but to me, it just seems like we should be having direct contact with Holly or you know, somebody from the MBTA on any correspondence or communications that we're doing, because there's obviously something's gotten dropped here.
I think that makes sense. When you guys have an issue, there should be, you know, emails to 2 or 3 people that get the thing at the same time. So there's none of this, you know, well, you told them, but this.
Right.
So I think we can get to that pretty simply. We can figure out what that chain of command, and maybe it's not a chain of command where it goes up and down. It's a barrage of 3 or 4 people that get this notification.
Right.
Well, that's true, but there should be a single point of contact. It doesn't have to be a person. It can be a department head, but the person who's responsible or the entity who's exactly responsible for maintaining the system, we need a point of contact, a consistent point of contact, because obviously we haven't had one. We've been, you know, when I talked about this issue, I talked with someone from MAC that said, oh, go talk to Clary. And that's who we've been talking to since 2014. Mm-hmm. So that was the point of contact we knew about. Yeah. And obviously it shouldn't be her, because I think what it ultimately, what I would like to get to, and I sympathize with you all. I'm on my conservation commission for 20 years, chairman for half that time. And we run into this all the time. I'm in Waltham, and we've got a lot of large properties that, you know,
are on the edge. I think the objective here would be that you guys don't have to call, that it's getting done. You go by and you say, perfect, no messing. So I think that's what we got to work to get to. And I think, Sherry, you're the one that are kind of like, it sounds like wrong, are the kind of I mean, everyone else I'm sure has the authority to go out there and make the call or anything. But Sherry, it sounds like it goes through you, and you've been out there and you say, okay, this clearly isn't working. This needs to be fixed. This needs to be adjusted. And Stephanie, I apologize, I don't know your last name.
Kelly.
Miss Kelly. I think you had mentioned. I forget what else. My point there was you had an idea earlier about how to.
Well, but just to change, making sure that we're contacting not just one individual.
Okay, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, we have multiple individuals that we're dealing with, not just the actual responsible party usually has an interim consultant that we're dealing with a lot of times. And I always make sure that anything I send to the consultant goes to the actual responsible party as well.
So maybe what it is, and I think when I look at the operation and maintenance plan, I don't see anything specifically calling out that swale. I mean, I understand, yes, we need to maintain the whole system, but there's nothing specifically that calls out that swale or how it's to be maintained. So might I suggest that I can meet out there, at some point in the next week or so to kind of walk through all of the different measures that are in place with the plan and say, okay, this isn't captured in the operation and maintenance plan. How do we make sure it's captured? And then I'll work with Holly, with the MBTA. So what it is, it's with MBTA, it's with Keolis, it's with US Ecology. There's a bunch of so many different entities that are kind of picking away. And someone says, oh, well, US Ecology was out there, so we don't have to do that but they were looking at a different thing. So how do we synthesize that all into one simple process? I think it's probably, aside from cleaning out the sand of that, that swale there and actually doing the physical work, it's probably like 70 or 80% just administrative, making sure people know what they're supposed to do and they're supposed to do it.
Right.
I think I agree, Bill. I think maybe a little more detailed plan, because I do think that back parking lot area, was added after this O&M plan was developed. Right. It was a separate project. So it wasn't part of the original O&M plan and the documents. I'm not saying that that's an excuse, but if someone has that original plan, they're not going to see that area, right? Because it's not on that. So I think doing sort of an integrated that has the whole facility in its existing condition would be helpful so that everybody knows all the pieces. That plan is pretty generic and it doesn't talk about the swale because at the time there were no swales, right? It was just catch basins and a detention basin, right? So, I think maybe some more details would be helpful so that the people that out there doing the maintenance actually, know which things they need to check.
Yeah, and I agree. I think you almost said it with your last word there. What they need to check, a single like a checklist would be great. To say these are the 7 or 8 or 10 things that need to get done, and maybe US Ecology is only responsible for 6 of them, and Keolis's guys are responsible for 3, and MBTA's guys are responsible for 4. But we have a checklist, and we can say, okay, well, 10 of the 18 things weren't done. So I think there's probably some administrative work that can get this moving pretty well, and then we can figure the rest out from there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Let me ask first. I'm sorry, Steph.
That's all right.
Which organization do you represent?
I'm with Doyle Engineering, so I'm a consultant. I'm working with Keolis. I work with Keolis and MBTA to essentially do this type of operation and maintenance. There's something not connecting here, among other things. But we just did something like this out in another community where it's like, okay, there was just a lot of different balls up in the air. How do we put it all on one platter and serve it well? So that's what we're trying to do here. But I'm a consultant for Keolis at this point, and MBTA at points.
Okay, I just want to get some context. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry. 'Cause I'm new now. So now this is all this history, and now here's a new guy.
Well, and just all these management plans heretofore have been very generic, very just, I know these, excuse me. All of the, whether it's a transportation company or utility company or whatever, are dealing with so many different sites all at the same time. I've done it. We do it ourselves where you just put a blanket plan out there, but this has gotten down to the point where we really need way more specifics about how this is going to get cleaned out. It can't just be a sweeping of the parking lot once a year. That's obviously way under what needs to be done. So yeah, I mean, because I don't even know how you're going to do that. You're going to vacuum all the sand out or all the riprap, or I mean, how do you? Yeah, well, I think I just got to, no pun intended, but kind of dig in and see what that swale is supposed to be. What's what it is now. So what I'd like to propose, and I don't know if it's the whole commission or you guys go through Sherry and Jordan, but meet somebody out there and just walk through each of the 10 or 12, stormwater BMPs and say, this is what needs to be done for this. This one's completely gone, needs to be reconstructed. This is, put up the signs and just come up with that almost like a punch list, and then see how that plays into a larger checklist of how to get this done in perpetuity.
And who does it?
So I guess I'm proposing somebody out there and have that discussion.
Well, yeah, and I'm not an engineer, and I'm not certainly a designer of stormwater basin structures, so I wouldn't have a clue of how to go about doing something like that. So, I mean, that really isn't my area of expertise. I think that you need to have somebody in there that's an engineer that knows how to design, construct, and clean these things.
Yeah. Well, that's me.
I was just going to say, that's why we have Bill.
Okay.
That's what I've basically been doing it since I was about 10 years old. That's my life.
Right.
It's a boring life. Actually, no, it's an exciting life because I get to meet folks like you all. But it's that's why they brought me in, so it's out there. Let's find out if it's engineered correctly. Let's fix it. Let's clean it. Let's get it on the checklist. Let's make sure that it's getting done, and not just done, but done at the right time. There's no sense in sweeping the parking lot, a month after the rainy season when it's already been washed away. That
right.
But it's also not putting snow over your catchment systems. I mean, and sand getting there. I mean, it's not even the issue of sweeping. You dump your snow on top of your stormwater management system, and it's going to stop functioning when all the sediment. I mean, this is trying to get to the point where you're doing common sense management, getting your contractors to do the right thing.
Yeah.
The people who buy your lots. I mean, it's straightforward stuff, but it's obvious to me listening to this that right hand doesn't know what left hand is doing at that station.
Yeah.
Lots of communication.
And just so you guys know, the commission and Sherry and Jordan, this is what we've had Bill do this on other parking lots for the MBTA through Keolis, is developing these stormwater management plans so that we can sort of identify that checklist so things are not missed, and so that everybody is on the same page as to what needs to be done out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not necessarily taking the O&M plan and rewriting it. It's just taking it and putting it in a digestible way so that the contractors can implement it in a way that makes sense. And maybe there's some gaps on this one that we need to fill, and we can certainly do that. But I think what I'd love to do is just meet out there and walk through those 10 or 15 BMPs and get a plan put together that's got your guys' input.
It seems to me there's a few things that need to happen. So I think, Bill, your desire to get out there and find out what the correct list is and to have a checklist is definitely one of those things. To Andy's point, it's not all just a bunch of things on a checklist in the sense that there are procedures that aren't being followed that should, such as how the snow is being removed from the parking lot.
Yeah.
Right, which obviously would be in the maintenance plan, isn't necessarily a checklist item that you look at and say, yes, this was done No, it wasn't. So some of the maintenance plan may need some revision in addition to the checklist. Jordan, I do wonder about having the proper counterpart from the town out there with Bill to evaluate the structures that are out there to make sure that we've got the right stuff and that's being remedied correctly, as well as having the right maintenance plan going forward in place. And then finally, there's been the issue of appropriate communication from the commission to whoever needs to be communicated to. So I think we still don't know who that is and how to do that, whether that's one person, as Andy said, that would be our desire, or if it's multiple people, we can deal with it, but we need to know who these people are, whether it's functional roles or people's names and contact. We don't care, but we need to know who these people are. So for example, from a year from now, when we go out and inspect this stuff, we know who to get in touch with, and we can then expect a response that we haven't seen in the past. So that's the list of things that I think need to happen. At the front, Bill, you asked, what do we need to do? That would be my response to you.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a very concise list. And I think the only one that I don't have my head around fully is the last one. Because I know there's a bunch of different people out there, but that's what I've done on the other projects I've worked with these folks, is to work with MBTA and Keolis to say, okay, who are the players and what's the chain of command? How do they all tie together? So I think that's something that we can definitely add to this. And I think that's almost the most critical point. I know in my experience on my commission, it's the information, getting the information proactively is paramount. But what's, the antithesis on the other end of that spectrum bad is not hearing anything or getting a mixed message. So the information back and forth ends up being critical. So I think that's something we definitely can get a handle on. It's in place. It's just a matter of how to make it happen.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, fundamentally, it's MBTA property, so I can be the main point of contact. I mean, Keolis is our operator, so they're the ones out there that are going to be doing the work. So if you want to contact us both, that's fine. Because when you contact me, they're the people I'm going to call because they're the ones that are responsible for maintaining that parking lot. So, if the commission wants to keep one point of contact, it can be me and I can funnel my way through Keolis, or you can keep it as Keolis and myself so that the T is aware of what you're asking them to do.
Yeah, Holly, I think we could almost identify, the chain of command and almost like a chart. Can't get you, call Clary.
Right.
Clary, call anyone but me. But we'll get there. I think.
You're all distorted.
Ms. Kelly, you're not coming in well. Sounds like Charlie Brown's teacher.
Yeah,
I got that.
Or Marvin the Martian, I'm not sure which, but
I think it might be Martin, yes.
Okay, moving right along.
So let me, can I go back to that kind of proposal? Can I meet someone out there and walk through the 4 items that Gary, I don't see his name either, but what Gary said, we'll kind of walk through those 4 items and see exactly what needs to get done out here and get my arms around and my head around what's happening there now.
Phil, do you want to email Jordan and myself and we can set up time?
Sounds perfect.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably looking at the things that Sherry has shown it. You're looking at doing some major reconstruction of non-functional BMPs out there. Okay.
Yep.
And then once they get fixed, you're going to want to make the investment in making sure they don't get destroyed again. I mean, that's your dollar, but it would be in your best interest to get that stuff fixed, get it functioning, and not let it get destroyed again due to bad management. And it sounds like, because there is the MBTA who owns it and Keolis who operates it. You guys got to figure out, and that's on you to figure out how you keep that from happening.
And how we keep from being in this position again.
Yeah, well, you don't want to be in this position again. You've got to make it happen.
Yeah. Let's I think let's work with Jordan and Sherry, and we'll come up with a time to meet out there. I think Holly, one of the things, and I don't see Clary on the line, but one of the things we may want to do is see if we can. There is some vegetation there that needs to be knocked down. If that could happen, and Holly, you and I can talk offline, but maybe that happens.
Sure.
That happens before we go out there, so we can actually see what's underneath all the vegetation. What I'm particularly looking for is things that are silted up and sanded up that we're not going to notice if it's covered with vegetation. So, Holly, you and I can talk about that, and then Sherry and Jordan, I can work with you, and obviously keep Clary and Holly in the loop via email and find time to get out there in the next couple of weeks.
Speaking for myself, I'd like to add that this whole continuing problem has colored my thinking. I'm only speaking for myself, but it's colored my thinking about in the past requests where we've been asked to consider operational changes that would expand the parking lot out there. And I have been myself very skeptical about those proposals because of the, I think, mismanagement of the environment around the existing parking lots. And I don't understand why it's not apparent to everyone on the proponents of the owner of the parking lot and the proponent for any changes to the parking lot, that they have to conform to the rules that they've already committed themselves to before they can expect to have a level playing field when they come in to ask for new parking spaces. So, I mean, it's very important that you do this right. I can't emphasize, and it shouldn't be a burden on us. The burden is on you to tell us what's going on. I don't think it's the other way around. I think the burden's on you. You're the one that's already working in the wetlands and around the wetlands at our sufferance. So do it right. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that's my intent, and it's what I'm understanding from Keolis and from MBTA that's what they want to get to. So I'll work with you guys to come up with a time, and I don't know that you need to continue this. It's just an ongoing enforcement order until it's not. So I think we'll look for me to coordinate with Sherry and Jordan, and obviously Holly and Clary and whoever else on our end, and we'll get out there and we'll have a discussion.
Okay.
Andy, just a reminder, as a point of process, you should make the motion to ratify the enforcement order. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I was getting there. Okay, I need a motion to ratify the enforcement order issued to the Mass Bay Transportation Authority at 40 Smith Valve Parkway, permit number 332-774 by Jordan McCarron on 10/1/2020.
So moved.
Second? Do I have a second?
A second.
No, you're breaking up.
Okay.
Stephanie, do your headphones have a microphone attached to them? Because it could be that.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with a roll call. Andrew Kenningsberg, yes. Tim Buckaloo.
Yes.
Stephanie Kelly, you can wait. Justin Lundberg.
Yes.
Gary Kessler.
Yes.
Gary's absent and Kelly is absent. Okay, thank you. We're looking forward to working with you.
Okay, I look forward to this.
Yes, same here. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Can we put off the discussion on special event planning since we're way over the line? I'd like to just view a couple of the important things. Okay, so pursuant to vote for the acceptance of deed for 3133 Eli Whitney. I need a motion pursuant to the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 8C, and vote taken under Article 1 of the September 29th, 2020 special town meeting to accept the care, custody, and control of Parcel A on Eli Whitney Street for conservation and passive recreation purposes. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Hey, that sounds better.
I turned the headphones off. I don't know what the problem is.
Feedback. I have a second.
I'd second, but I can't.
Give it to Gary. Okay, roll call vote. Andrew Kenningsberg, yes. Tim Buckaloo.
Yes.
Stephanie Kelly.
Yes.
Justin Lundberg.
Yes.
Gary Kessler.
Yes.
Gary and Kelly absent. Motion passes. Okay.
Andy, one note, the actual deeds, which you all need to sign in person like you did for 140 South Street, are at the town clerk. So, starting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, you can go in there and sign it. And I just ask you guys do it as soon as you can.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing is a certificate of compliance for the DPW 131 Oak Street. Is there any details you'd like to provide?
No, Sherry and I have done multiple site visits over the course of this project. Everything is stable. All of their stormwater BMPs are functioning properly and were constructed, per the approved plan. They submitted an O&M for both sites, which I've included as an ongoing condition in the motion. Sherry, I don't know if you have anything to add, but I think all the items that we asked for, they corrected and have done. I did one final site visit, I believe last Thursday, and things looked good.
Okay. Therefore, I need a motion to issue a full certificate of compliance to the town of Westborough DPW 131 Oak Street, permit number 332-868, with an ongoing condition to adhere to the Banyan and Cumberland Pump Station stormwater management operation and maintenance requirements prepared by Woodard and Curran, dated 10/8/20.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Andrew Kenningsberg, yes. Tim Buckaloo.
Yes.
Stephanie Kelly.
Yes.
Justin Lundberg.
Yes.
Gary Kessler.
Yes.
Jerry and Kelly absent. Motion passes. Let's see. So any issues or changes to the minutes for September 8th?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none, I will sign them. Any other updates you want to give, Jordan, or you just want to call it a night?
For that.
I do have one thing that it's just an upcoming project, and a couple of the project proponents were listening in tonight. So I just wanted to, in respect to them, to just give you a summary of an upcoming project. I'm going to forward you an email that was sent to me by the project proponent. This is looks like a pretty straightforward project involving an old decommissioned and kind of like decrepit pump station on the state hospital land off of Lyman Street, way back in as you go. Actually, Sherry, would you mind bringing up, I had just forwarded you an email that I was hoping you could do a screen share if you can do it quickly. I don't know how to describe the location. It's still too new in town, so I just want to show you exactly where it is.
You're talking about the one that's all on the lake edge past the gate? Or the one
No, this is across the street from the lake.
Across the street.
Oh, way over there. Okay.
Yeah. Sherry, would you?
Let me pull it over.
Thanks. Is it possible for you to scroll through a few of those pictures?
Trying to, but
pump station.
Okay.
Yeah, I know
can't,
what that
so.
Oh, I know where that is. Way out in the woods.
Way out in the woods.
Yeah,
It's on state land. The proponent would be a state agency, an asset, whatever the DCAM is their acronym. I don't remember the full title of the agency. So yeah, the Department of Capital Asset Management, exactly. So I'm just going to read a couple of quick things, but what they're proposing is essentially to remove that structure, leave the slab. They are working in the wetland. They'll need trail access. They're proposing not to widen the trail, only to basically mow vegetation, pruning on the sides of the trail and overhead pruning of larger branches. Perimeter controls will be set around the building. If debris falls outside of the footprint, it will be collected by hand and returned. The slab will be left in place to minimize disturbance. Tree removal will be limited to the extent that trees are growing on against the structure. Demolition work to take place over approximately 1 to 2 weeks in 2021. I've indicated them they need to file an NOI, but I thought this was a permittable project, particularly where it's can be viewed as both a health hazard and just a public safety concern.
Yeah.
Wherein they have good trail access. They did propose to do a little bit of clearing just past this structure to make an area for them to actually turn their vehicles around, so that when they load their dump trucks or whatever, that they're facing out. But it'll be I don't know how to what the term is, but they're going to be kind of like taking this down one brick at a time, basically, because of the sensitive resource area.
Has this already had the lead and asbestos survey done on it?
I don't know about that. That's a good question. I'll write that down, because they're going to want any feedback that you have or any questions that you have to prepare them for their filing.
I guess the question I first have is, I've been looking at this thing for 20 some odd years. It's like, why now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andy, would you also be concerned about, how are they going to do this and keep the trail open? They talk about fencing off the area around the demolition. Mm-hmm. Are they going to be able to keep the trail open? And if it's going to be closed, how long would it be closed for? This is an access point that allows you
to close the trail.
You think so? I think so.
That turnaround area past the building already exists.
Yes.
So they should be taking advantage of that and not creating a new one. And yes, this is in the wetland, intimately in the wetland.
Yes, it's not wetland adjacent; it's wetland in. Yes, Gary, there is a turnaround. It's grown in so that they would just have to mow and clear it to make it accessible. But you're right about that.
Yes, that's correct.
So the trail's going to be closed. In my opinion, there just needs to be some kind of control or some way of communicating the expectations to the public about that. That's all.
Right. Signage. I know what you mean. And it may be that they close it during the day, but not when they're not working or not on the weekends, if the work site is secure. The
other thing, Jordan, if I remember correctly, that slab has a hole in it by design. There's a section, and if you look at your picture, I think in the far corner, where there's basically a square pit, I think. I may be remembering incorrectly, but I think there's a lower area that needs to be filled in.
It does look like there's some sort of underground structure there with two or three caps on it, in about the center to the left of the center there.
Yeah, I think this was a pump house. I think they were collecting water from wells and pumping it up to the state hospital. That's what it looked like to me.
Yes.
It was also the electrical station. For power.
Andy, to your question, I don't know that there's any specific reason other than it's collapsed and they want to demolish it in the interest of public safety, but no particular reason why now. I think maybe there's now funding available or
because there's structures like this all over the place. Just on Lyman Street, you just go past the power station, there's a collapsing building right next to that. And speaking of things that should be removed, I wish they'd go after the power station.
It looks like they're really focused in on the water infrastructure, including a supply well and distribution system. And that while the majority is located in Northborough, this one pumping station is located in Westborough.
Okay.
So that's
well, they could do the well over on the shore of Lake Johnson past the gate at the same time.
So, you know, they're going to file, I think they're looking at probably the November or the December meeting. You know, walking the trail in with them, it's sufficiently wide. They claim they won't need, there'll be very low impact on the trail. They won't need to widen it except to maybe cut vegetation up and make sure they've got basically their corridor. Anything, I asked, well, were they working that close to the wetland, something, an errant brick or a piece of the building falls off beyond their erosion sedimentation control, they go in by hand and take it out basically. So, I mean, they're going to be working carefully, and you can press them on that when they come in, you know, for their permit application.
So is this all being handled by the town now at this point?
Not that property. That property's DCAM. It's still state.
DCAM. It's state.
Yeah. This is on the east side of Lyman.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. I'll forward you this email, and what I'll do is take a screenshot of our online GIS. You can see what parcels. They indicated they're managed by SVT. You guys would know more than probably better than me who maintains those trails, but it may SVT. So it may be that we, you know, at sort of condition that they communicate with SVT about trail closures and communicating to the public about the project.
I'm also,
unless they've done something about the beaver, they may not be aware that road floods by their gate for a good section of the early part of the year.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that there's a parking lot just before the gate down there, and the road that accesses down to the parking lot. If they're going in there, I'd like to see all of that stuff repaired. It's in terrible condition and virtually unusable, and that's not reasonable.
Okay. Sherry, can you scroll over and you can actually see, if you take off your wetland layer, you can actually see the pump station, I believe.
Right there. No, I'm wrong.
Keep going a little. I think you have to keep going.
Right there it is. Yeah. And I guess maybe this goes without saying, but do they have to do a 21E on this site to do the demolition? Because if this was an electrical shop, as Andy suggests, those places are very commonly contaminated with PCBs and remnants of
It's not
a 21E that would be done. It's a demolition assessment where they have to go in and do lead. And
thank you, Stephanie, for clarifying that. But it's some sort of assessment of whether there are hazardous materials in the ground around the area where they're going to be working. Because if it was a transformer shop, transformers were all held
notorious
GB and other chemicals. That's all. Yeah, I don't know. My concern.
Tim, to your point, we do now have a special condition related to making sure that any applicant gets all required state, federal, local permits. But in this instance, you know, we can ask them when they come in for their hearing, but we can cite any specific permits like what you're referring to that they would need to get.
I'm not even sure they do. I'm just saying it's prudence when you're working, especially if you're working in the wetlands and doing disturbances in the wetlands. You have the possibility of creating release situations, and not cool.
I can see why they want to leave the slab there, because God only knows what's underneath it.
Yeah. Well, and also really, I mean, you guys have walked the trail, so you know, but I mean, the wetland is right up on it. There's no buffer. So I think that's more in just a consideration of the environmental impact of removing that slab versus leaving it put. And then it's a historic artifact.
Yeah.
I had some other items, but nothing pressing, Andy. I'm comfortable with passing on them.
Yeah, it's
Sherry had a few things too, but Sherry, are you okay to? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
All right. Okay, nothing else. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Tim gets it. Stephanie gets the second. Okay. I can do this by acclamation or everybody just leaves. Okay.
Bye.
All right.
Peace out.
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody. Thanks a lot.